guys. So, 2018 has been blessed by the movie gods with loads of innovative films trying out new things and attempting new ideas that might be used by other movies for years to come. But if you were to ask me what the most innovative, original, and ultimately engaging film of 2018 would be, one of my strongest picks would have to be Anish Chaganty's Searching. This video will not be discussing plot spoilers outright in case you're some rebel, but I will be showing footage that could give away a lot of the plot indirectly. Be warned, and probably still avoid everything, because the movie is fantastic. Searching follows one of the few good dads in movie history named David Kim, played by the wonderful John Cho, who has to investigate into his daughter's laptop to find out about her past and hidden secrets online after she goes missing one night. The movie may sound like a surface-level thriller at first, but by the time the credits roll, you realize we've dealt with unspoken grief, reactionary internet culture, privacy online, parent-child relationships, and it's all taken place on a MacBook Pro. The first-time director of Searching, Anish Chaganty, was actually working for Google until a few years ago when the chance to turn his short film idea into a feature came about. The dude's knowledge of computers and internet culture in general because of his previous job really made him ideal for a film like this, and because of his involvement, the movie never feels out of touch or pandering, which is great. Chaganty and his screenwriter buddy Sev Ohanian had both been hesitant to make Searching into a feature-length film initially for fear of stretching the premise into a gimmick, which was a good thing to be worried about. Chaganty was also adamant that Searching should be released in theaters instead of going straight to digital, because the small exchanges between people over text and online needed to look as big as they feel. And after seeing the movie opening weekend on the big screen, I'd be inclined to agree. The one idea that changed Chaganty and Ohanian's minds and convinced them to make the film was the concept for the opening scene, and it's not hard to see why. The opening scene of Searching alone is enough to make any filmmaker or film goer look at their computer screen with new eyes and realize it's a storytelling force to be reckoned with. In a mere 6 minutes, Chaganty beautifully portrays the entire journey of a teenage girl's childhood and eventually the loss of her mother to cancer, and it's all done by looking at photos and videos on a Windows desktop. This sequence is a master class in short-form montage storytelling, right there with the first 15 minutes of Up, which it was actually inspired by. Simple things like moving a calendar event to a later date, opening an email from a doctor, or starting a new post on Facebook without knowing what to type become emotionally devastating simply based on the context and framing of the device. The main thing you'll notice is how well balanced the actual dialogue is with simple on-screen text and visual cues. There are lots of emotional beats in these first 6 minutes that occur even when we're not looking at an actor's face or hearing them speak. And the idea that the movement of a cursor or sending of a text can be just as effective as spoken dialogue will be a pattern you'll start noticing in the rest of the film. I'm not crying, you're crying! But let's talk about the techniques in the rest of the film. As mentioned, Searching has been oft praised for its attention to detail and really smart Easter eggs scattered throughout, and rightfully so. The desktop screen presented throughout the film had to feel like the laptop of someone real, and so a ton of work was put into creating fake files and photos and documents, making social media accounts for fictional people, and being sure all the headlines and videos on the internet felt like the real internet. Fun fact, whenever you see any YouTube thumbnail in the movie, it's just a still from one of Chaganty's previous short films. Which is why I think this movie should get its own nomination category for Best Digital Production Design. There's an alien invasion happening in the headlines off screen. Look it up, I'm not gonna go into it. You can see a love interest of David's trying to get in touch with him and then realizing what's going on. Some of the teenage characters from the back half of the film are featured throughout the montage in the beginning as childhood classmates of Margot's. And then there's also an email at the bottom of David's inbox that intentionally spoils the whole plot of the movie. But we're not going to show that. All of these Easter eggs are pretty hard to spot on the first viewing, and that's because the movie does a fantastic job of directing your eyes to the things you're supposed to see and averting them away from the things you're not. Even beyond the spoiler email, much of the ending of the film is hidden in plain sight throughout the first act if you just look at the clues you're being given. But the movie doesn't want you to see those clues and setups until later, and so you don't. The way Searching uses camera movement to command the viewer's attention, even on a MacBook screen, is nothing short of genius. If you look at one of the unfriended Unfriended movies, which, yes, we're comparing because they're the only other set on a laptop films currently popular, the actual footage in both of them is just a live screencast of a desktop for 2 hours, with barely any editing, intentional visual storytelling, or camera movement involved. A screenshot of Unfriended from an hour in is roughly the same as a screenshot from 2 hours in, because the framing never changes. And to be fair, that's the style the Unfriended movies are going for, and they do have their own merits and flashes of creativity. But the same approach is certainly not the case with Searching. Searching uses camera motion and close-ups and montages to guide your eye to the text and images you're supposed to see and help you experience the information and reveals as David experiences them. While the Unfriended movies feel like you're just passively watching a desktop screen with videos of people talking on it, Searching feels like you're actively engaged in the story of a character using a computer to solve a mystery. And that applies even when we're not looking at David's face on camera, especially when we're not looking at his face on camera. Simple things like scrolling frantically through a sea of social media posts, hesitating before closing a window, or hard-cutting to typing a text often contain the same amount of personality that showing a reaction shot would. The motion of the camera definitely keeps things lively throughout the whole film, especially since even when we're not panning or moving all that much, there's always a bobbing movement to the footage to indicate that we're seeing it through the eyes of a character instead of remaining static. It's the computer screen equivalent of going handheld. There are lots of little things that contribute to the big picture. The film has a surprising emphasis on sound design throughout, which definitely helps each scene feel more like a scene with a beginning and end, and aids in differentiating between locations. The ambient noise of David's office, for instance, is far different than the ambient noise of his home. The movie has a lot of great hard cuts, too. Perhaps the most innovative and effective aspect of Searching to me is the way it utilizes its very limited camera setups to their full potential. Most of Searching's actor-driven sections were shot entirely on GoPros, simulating FaceTime webcams on a computer. The film does branch out to other formats as the story goes on. We creatively cut to news footage and live streams at some points. There's a scene where David hides cameras and records the footage on his computer. But for the most part, the film is driven entirely by a couple actors' performances in front of a small webcam. Under any other direction, this narrative framing device could have been a lot more limiting than freeing. Having most of your movie take place with an actor sitting at a desk in front of a GoPro is ultimately a very low-budget way to make a film, and if you don't expand on the premise creatively, that's going to show and get stale fast. With Searching, however, the webcam device adds far more to the film's narrative and visual effectiveness than it ever detracts. Simple blocking choices, like having David sitting close to the camera and then stepping away into the background, automatically create the difference between a close-up and a wide shot without ever moving the camera at all. The fact that the actors move on a foreground-background axis rather than a left-to-right one really adds depth to every shot. The lighting changes and color aesthetics were pretty much orchestrated based on the actors' closeness to the glowing computer screen, too. Oh, and you know when we see the footage buffer or glitch for a second? That was the editor's way of hiding cuts between takes so they'd have the best read of each line. The movie also plays with scale a lot. When David is looking for answers and feels helpless, he's often framed far from the camera as a smaller figure in the background. When he's out for revenge or knows what he's got to do, the film puts him directly in front of the webcam and even places the FaceTime window on the desktop such that his face towers large over the thing he's looking at. It's stuff like this that makes me marvel at this film. Anish Chaganty and the editors really managed to take a simple premise and milk as much rich visual film language out of it as was physically possible. There's a bit I love in this hidden camera scene with David where he gets into a fight and knocks the camera from the shelf onto the ground, and that seemingly accidental action creates an entirely new and closer camera angle when he goes to sit down on the couch. That is brilliant. The biggest feat of Searching is the way it turns tiny mouse clicks and button presses, things we do on computers every day, into cinematic and emotional events within a story. The change of an exclamation point to a period becomes a comedic beat. A colorful screensaver becomes ominous and empty. Notification bells ring out like gunshots, and the sound of emptying the trash on a MacBook is a crushing defeat. The fact that Searching is driven mainly by text on a computer adds a lot to an otherwise reasonably simple live-action story, but it also allows for far more stream-of-consciousness writing that puts us inside the protagonist's head. For instance, David typing a text and deleting it shows us what he wants to say but holds himself back from saying. The fact that he labels his security cam footage "proof" in all caps shows us he's confident that he's figured out the mystery. Seeing what he's been searching in the background of the frame shows us how anxious he's become. Deleting a file from his hard drive shows us he wants to forget it from his own memory. What we do on our computers is often the equivalent of what we do when nobody's watching. And what we do when nobody's watching is always interesting material for a story. Searching, in many ways, is about the unsent text that you typed and got too scared to send. The expressions of your heart that you wouldn't have said out loud for fear of how someone would react. The word-based narrative of the movie puts us directly into the minds of the characters. And it also allows for comedic beats, too.
Everything is great. Margot and I are great.
More than anything, Searching is a great movie because with or without the computer screen device, it's a story with something to say. A lot to say. The film has commentary on reactionary internet culture, the way people online respond when faced with a tragic event, posting about it to gain moral approval from their followers, speculating and reading into the situation without knowing anything personally, and even acting like the people affected are their best friends if it will give them more views and likes.
Choose my best friend.
The movie also comments on the way our memories are defined by the photos we save on our computers. Is deleting a video the same as deleting that memory from your head? Is recording and posting our entire lives online a positive thing or a negative thing? These are big questions, and the film isn't of the mindset that technology is evil or inherently destructive either, which I like. In the end, the mystery is solved using technology, and the relationships, to some degree, are too. Searching surmises that maybe starting to heal from grief and loss could be as simple as sending an awkward text to a family member. And it's that kind of intimacy, even on an iMessage screen, that makes the movie so innovative and compelling. Thanks for watching, guys. I would be amiss if I didn't mention the two editors of Searching, Will Merrick and Nick Johnson, who Anish Chaganty says are solely responsible for lots of the things that we talked about in this video, the little touches that make it so interesting. There's actually another video about them solely as editors by a channel called This Guy Edits, and it's about their creative process and stuff, and that was really good. It's a nice deep dive into their editing techniques and everything, so you should check that out. That's linked below. Just wanted to credit that a little bit because he did a great job. You know the drill. Support me on Patreon, subscribe if you haven't, all that stuff. I will see you in the next video. All right, bye.